Okay, so you know how sometimes you click on like climate change is fake kind of headlines? Like you can't help yourself. You got to see what they're saying.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a train wreck you can't look away from.
Exactly. So we asked you guys to send us some of that stuff, and wow, you did not disappoint.
I was kind of amazed how much is out there. It's not just those clickbait articles either.
Right. We're talking Wikipedia, forum debates. Someone even sent a note about arguing with their uncle at Thanksgiving.
The whole spectrum, from kind of funny to kind of scary.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. What is climate change denial, actually? Not just the Earth is flat version.
Right, because it's way more nuanced than that.
Hmm.
There's a whole bunch of ways people engage with this, and not all of it's straight up denial.
Okay, so to make sure we're all on the same page, let's hit the basics. Wikipedia says, and I quote, climate change denial is denial, dismissal, or unwarranted doubt that contradicts the scientific consensus on climate change, including the extent to which it is caused by humans, its effects on nature and human society, or the potential of adaptation to global warming by human actions.
Wordy, but it makes a key point, right? There's
Yeah.
a difference between being like, are we sure about this one thing? And just saying, nope, the whole thing's bogus.
Totally. Like questioning whether a specific measurement is accurate versus claiming the whole thermometer is rigged.
Exactly. One of those gets a conversation going, the other one, not so much.
And speaking of conversations, those forum posts you sent are perfect examples of how this all plays out in the wild.
Oh, yeah, it gets real in those comment sections.
For real. So we've got forum user A who is absolutely convinced this is all a hoax. They keep pulling these random sentences from like the Wikipedia article on climate change denial.
Let me guess, trying to use like short-term temperature fluctuations to disprove the whole concept of long-term warming.
Bingo. Cherry picking at its finest, ignoring the forest for like one weirdly shaped tree.
A classic tactic, you see it all the time, zooming in on isolated details to try to create doubt about the bigger picture.
Totally. Then there's forum user B. They're cool with admitting the climate is changing, which, okay, progress.
Baby steps.
Right, but they're not buying that we're the main cause. They're all about those natural climate cycles, you know? The Earth just does its thing.
Which is where understanding how we actually know what's causing what gets super important. Like, yeah, there are natural variations, but the speed and intensity of what we're seeing now, that's pointing right at us, at things like fossil fuels.
And then we've got forum user C. This one's interesting. They seem to get that climate change is happening, but they're like, meh, not a big deal.
Ah, the it's fine approach.
Yeah.
Classic denial tactic.
Right. One post even brought up the medieval warm period, to say this has happened before.
Which, okay, sure, the Earth's temperature has gone up and down throughout history. No one's denying that. But the key is what's happening now is happening way faster.
Mm.
And that makes the consequences way worse.
It's like saying we've had fires before, so this forest fire is fine. Like, no, this one's different.
Exactly. And pretending it's not a big deal doesn't make it go away, in fact.
It probably makes it worse.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. It's kind of like ignoring a leak in your roof, right? You could fix it now, or you could wait till the whole ceiling caves in.
And then you're really in trouble.
Exactly. And with climate change, we're talking about the roof over everyone's head, the whole planet. But here's the thing. It's not always about just misunderstanding the science. It goes deeper than that.
Oh, for sure. Speaking of deeper, this reminds me of that note I sent you about my friend.
The Thanksgiving uncle.
No, this was just like coffee a few weeks ago. Anyway, we're talking about those crazy cold snaps last winter, and he's using them as proof global warming is fake. Like, dude, come on.
It's wild how tied up this stuff gets with people's values, their whole sense of self even. Bet that coffee chat got a little intense.
A little bit. Like, I could practically see the gears turning. It wasn't just about the weather, It was like admitting climate change meant admitting a whole bunch of other stuff he didn't want to deal with.
Right, because for some people, accepting the science feels like accepting defeat, or like it challenges their whole understanding of how the world works.
And maybe their place in it, too. Like, if you built your whole life around something that's actually part of the problem.
Exactly. And that's something anyone who wants to talk about this needs to get: denial. It's often a defense mechanism. You come at someone swinging facts, they're just going to dig in deeper.
So what are you supposed to do? Because honestly, sometimes more facts just make it worse.
It's like you said before, different languages. You got to find some common ground first.
Okay, so how? Where do you even start?
Honestly, listening. Like really listening. Not just waiting for your turn to talk. Try to get where they're coming from, what matters to them. Then you can maybe connect those values back to climate change.
Okay, so like say someone's all suspicious of the government doing anything.
Right. So instead of hitting them with carbon tax arguments, maybe you talk about how renewable energy creates jobs,
Yeah.
appeals to the whole entrepreneurial spirit thing.
So it's about reframing, meeting people where they're at, finding that common language.
Exactly. Not about tricking anyone. It's about building a little trust, having a real conversation.
Makes sense. But what about when it's obvious someone's just like wrong, spreading misinformation on purpose?
Oh, I've seen those forum threads, citing studies from the 90s that have been, like, completely debunked since then.
Yeah. Or that one about global warming being caused by sunspots.
In those cases, yeah, you got to be a bit more assertive. Point out politely that the evidence they're using is shaky at best. Maybe offer to share some actual science, but...
You don't be a jerk about it.
Exactly. Remember, you're not going to win an argument. You're trying to have a conversation. And
Sometimes the best conversation is the one you don't have.
Sometimes, yeah. If it's getting heated, disrespectful, unproductive, just disengage. Say, hey, I appreciate you sharing your perspective, but I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. You can't force someone to be open-minded.
But you can choose how you respond. Honestly, that's good advice for life in general, not just climate change. Yeah, it's easy to say walk away, but it's tough. Especially with something like climate change, it feels like. I don't know, like I'm letting the whole planet down if I don't argue back every point.
I get it, it's important, but trust me, sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and recharge. You can't pour from an empty cup.
True, true. But then what can I do? Like, I want to have these conversations, but I'm not a scientist. What if I don't have all the answers?
You don't need to be a PhD to talk about this stuff. Remember those forum posts with people using things like the medieval warm period to say, see, it's natural?
Oh, yeah. Forum user C was all over that. Like, it's all happened before, so no worries.
That's where having that bigger picture in mind helps. It's true, Earth's climate changes naturally, but what's happening now is way faster than anything we've ever seen. That's the key that a lot of folks miss.
So it's not just about the facts themselves, but how they fit into, like, the whole history of the planet.
Exactly. Connecting the dots, seeing the whole timeline. And hey, never underestimate just being curious yourself. Ask questions, even if you feel like you should know the answer already.
So, like with my friend, instead of arguing about those cold snaps, I could ask what he makes of the overall trend of rising temperatures, even though it feels obvious to me.
Exactly. Or where he gets his information on this stuff. It's not about tricking him. It's about genuinely trying to understand where he's coming from.
Building a bridge instead of, like, lobbing grenades back and forth. Much better image.
And who knows, maybe that open conversation is what helps him be more open to, actual science, too.
Man, this whole deep dive has been wild. I came in thinking I needed to be a climate expert, but really it's more like being a good listener, a critical thinker.
That's it. This isn't a problem any one person can solve. It's going to take all of us understanding each other, finding common ground, figuring out solutions together.
So what's the takeaway, besides maybe not arguing with relatives at holiday dinners? What can we actually do with this info?
That's the big question, isn't it? The one we should all be asking ourselves. But if there's one thing to remember from all this, it's this. How do we move past fear and denial and towards, I don't know, hope, action? Because this isn't just about saving the planet, it's about building a better future for all of us.
That's something to think about. Thanks for diving in with us today, everyone.